Call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll go on to the roll call.
Dr. Dave Bardo.
Here.
Dr. Noel Deep. Wayne Gagnon.
Here.
Jill Maddock-Nelson. Here. Andy Mary.
Here.
Mary Neufeld. Here. Danny Pyatt.
Here.
J.D. Schrader.
Here.
Angel Zimmerman.
Okay, we will go on to public comment. If you have to sign in for public comment, and Mary Kay, will you give her a minute to do that?
Sure.
And while she's doing that, I'd just like to say we welcome all of our visitors here to this board meeting. I would like to take this time to remind all of us how tonight's proceedings will work. You must be signed up to speak during public comment, and your time will be limited to 5 minutes. As is the protocol for all regularly scheduled board meetings, we will not be taking comment or questions from the audience. So that everyone can hear, please refrain from having side conversations. And as with our students, we expect everyone here tonight to remain respectful.
Yes.
And the first person speaking tonight is Jennifer Cresson.
I'm a mom of a child in the Ingo School District.
Charity.
Yes.
Just let me introduce you first.
Okay.
Charity Smith. Ian wants to be talking about COVID-19 and what, education system?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a mom of a child in Ingo School District, and I'm here about something that recently happened with my daughter. And I give comment and grievance about it and some cause and effects that have to do with this. On November 17th, 2021, after picking my daughter up from school, she told me her nose was stuffed and running more than usual. She's had nasal situations since she was little. She was worried that the school would tell her to quarantine. I tried to reassure her, but that's when she got upset and told me that she had already gone 3 weeks without her best friend being there because of quarantine, even though it was somebody in her household, and she had already had COVID, been fully vaccinated, tested negative with no symptoms, and also was told by a doctor that even if she was exposed, her immunity would fight it off before she would be able to pass it on to anyone else. Also, just finding out that right now she's failing courses because of these problems. So it is my opinion, in understanding and grievance, that these actions, tendencies, and credulity is a social injustice, psychologically disturbing, causes cognitive dissonance with negative outcome. It is an abuse of power that misleads, gambles with our children's lives, and it confuses people through grants, underlying agreements, cooperative programs, and evaluations covered by abbreviations and definitions made up of their own likings. For example, this is who, how, what, when, why, and where. The UNESCO, EI, the USDE, ESEA, FERPA, IDEA, the NEA, the WEAC, LEA, DPI, SSPW, the OSERS, MLSS, TIA, IEP, RDA, PCSA, ELS, EEK, and WISE. Also, this takes away true education. It's an invasion of privacy and loses persons' identifying qualities, thoughts of opinion, understanding differences, empathy, and ultimately freedom. This has to stop. Our real mission should be putting our kids back in school, protect them from evil in all its doings, and teach our children nothing but the truth in classes that are going to be getting them ready for the real world that's around them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Jennifer? You're going to be discussing masking and CRT?
I just want to say, and I saw something in the last month that I was very upset by with the fact that our kids have to wear masks in our schools. And it's to my understanding that Dr. McKenna is the medical advisor for you guys. Am I right on that? Because I know he's written letters and you guys have read them in the last couple meetings that I've attended. And so you take his advice on the medical aspect of things, but how come his children can be at extracurriculars such as 4-H events, not wearing a mask, sitting at a crowded table full of people, and going bowling in the bowling alley after the awards banquet for 4-H, bowling with their friends unmasked, but yet he writes letters and tells you guys that you guys need to vote for masks to keep our children safe, when that should be the parents' job of the kids to keep them safe. So I'm very angry and very upset that I go to a 4-H event and I see his children not wearing masks, which, I mean, my kids weren't wearing masks, but I would vote against the mask. I don't believe in the mask. So that is why my children weren't wearing a mask. But given the fact that he's a doctor telling you guys that you guys should be voting for our children to wear those stupid muzzles in the school, when his children can run around this town without a mask on. That is what I am upset by, and that is what I think is very wrong. And then to top it off, we've now seen some of you guys getting your hair done. We've seen you in restaurants. We've seen you in grocery stores. And now we've seen Dr. McKenna's kids at a public event that had 200 and some people at it in a packed banquet hall, and then going to the bowling alley and sharing bowling balls with their friends. So they're sticking their hands right in the same bowling ball holes. So you telling me that if they're spreading COVID, they definitely did it that day. But that's okay, because what? Because he's a doctor? Because he thinks he's high and mighty in this town, or what? And what, we're this big, and you guys, because you're on the board, you're this big, that you can do what you want, but you're going to make us put muzzles on our kids at school? I think that's wrong. I think that's very wrong. You make it look like you guys are special. You can do what you want. You make the rules up. We have to follow them, whether we like it or not, but you guys can do what you want in the town. It's a small town. We're all going to see you guys doing stuff. So if you're going to vote for the mask, and you believe in the mask, and you think it's safe, and you think it's going to save lives, then do what you preach. That is what I'm asking with the mask. Now on to my other subject, is that CRT. Now you guys can slap whatever name you want on it, but it's CRT. It's critical race theory. I don't really care what you call it, because that is what it is. And everyone in this country knows that every school board across this country is trying to push it through their schools, and they're slapping different names on it, so we don't know what to expect, so we don't know what you're teaching, because after I came to the last meeting and I listened to it, I knew darn well that I've seen letters and stuff come home from school that were talking this stupidity, but I didn't know what it was. Well, now I know what it is. It's critical race theory. That is what you're shoving in our schools. And all across this country, parents are waking up to it and realizing what school boards are doing, and that they're pushing this garbage into our kids' head, and it's ruining our schools. Academic test scores are going down. They're not going up. Behavioral issues are rising in the schools. You're confusing the living snot out of our little teenagers that already have hormones flying high. The last thing they need to be pounding in their head is that they don't know if they're a girl or a boy. Seriously, that is garbage. I want my kids to learn how to read and write and spell. I don't need them getting taught that my boys are going to be privileged because they're white. I don't want them being taught that if they have a black friend, which they do, that they're going to be oppressed because they're born black. No, I don't care the color of your skin. If you work hard, you try hard, and you do the best at whatever you're good at, whatever God gave you for their talent, you can be whatever you want to be, and it shouldn't be the color of your damn skin making it one way or another. So that is what I want my children being taught. And you're throwing this stupid critical race theory in here, and it's just, look at the middle school. I don't have kids in the middle school, but I have friends that have kids in the middle school. Why is like a good portion of the kids transgender now? Like, okay, if you want to be a transgender, that's fine. I'm not going to look down at anyone. But if your percentage of your children in your school are raising that it's that high, there's a problem. And it's probably because of your stupid critical race theory, and I had no idea it was in my school district. Since 2018 you brought it here, I didn't know. And you know why I didn't know? Is because I trusted you guys to do the right thing for my kids. So I wasn't coming to these meetings. I'm a busy mom. I work, and we have hobbies, and I run a business. I don't have time to be at every little thing, so I try to put trust in the people that we voted in to these seats. And I shouldn't have. I was blind, and I shouldn't have. I should have been here. I should have been knowing what you guys were doing, so I knew what was going in my kid's head. But no, I was at home trying to live life and trying to trust that we voted the right people here. We didn't. We didn't put the right people here. And it's obvious, and it's sickening. And I'm so ashamed and embarrassed and just angry that my kids go to this school, and I'm this close to wanting to move them. I heard White Lake School, their test scores are way higher than Antigo. Probably because they're not teaching critical race theory. That's probably why. I would love to transfer my kids to White Lake. But the agony of it is that I am a busy working mom, and the thought of having to drive my kid to a different school district, it's just going to make life crazy and hectic more than it already is. I have a bus that comes right to my house and picks up my kids, and that's convenient. So the only other option that I see is come springtime, we need to vote you guys out that are voting for this garbage in our schools and vote some smart people in that are going to do the right thing. Critical race theory is not right. And the other thing I don't understand is, have you not opened your eyes to what's going on across the country? School boards that are pushing this garbage, the mask and the critical race theory, those people aren't getting voted back in. I mean, we have a county in Texas that is 75% Hispanic, never voted Democrats into their school district. It went Republican. Why do you think? Because of critical race theory. Parents don't want it in their schools. So if you want to keep your position, you better open your eyes, get this garbage out of our schools, otherwise you're not going to have your position come spring. Us parents are sick of it. We're sick of it. We were just blind. We were letting life be too busy to come to these meetings, but we're awake now. We know what you're doing. COVID-19, the only positive that it brought is that it woke a lot of people up to the crap that's going on in this country, and we don't like it. You start messing with parents and their right to take care of their children and trying to interfere with how we want them raised and how we want them taught, you're messing with the wrong area. Come springtime, you're going to lose your position if you don't open your eyes. Us parents don't want our kids masked. We don't want critical race theory in the school. And you're going to lose kids. Either they're going to transfer out of Antigo School District, or you're just going to lose your spot in your seat. Because we're going to show up in spring, and we're going to show up big. And it ain't going to go blue, it's going to go red like the rest of this country has. There's been a lot of school boards voting in the last month, and they all went red. They didn't go blue. And it's because of critical race theory and masks. That is why. I mean, you see schools in California when they're putting shoes all out the front of the school, showing and improvising every student that's not going to be there because of critical race theory. That's California. That's a blue state. Wisconsin's not a blue state. Even though we have a blue governor, Democrat governor, it is mostly red. And this county voted red in 2020. So you need to open your eyes. The parents in this county don't want this garbage. I came up here from Racine, and I went to school in Western Racine County, a really good school district that was in the top of the state for academic testing. I moved up here thinking I came to this nice little town, it'll be a nice little school district for my kids. I am so wrong. I didn't think when I heard about, first time I heard about critical race theory, I thought that would be something in California I wouldn't have to worry about in northern Wisconsin. And then I come to the last school board meeting, and I'm dumbfounded to find out my kids are being taught this garbage.
Okay, Jennifer, do you want to wrap it up?
I guess.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will go on to the student representative report.
First quarter ended Wednesday, November 3rd. The Student Council donated $609 to Gerald and Dorothy Baum Cancer Center from the fundraiser that they held. The career fair was held on Wednesday, November 10th. Students had the opportunity to talk to local businesses and colleges about careers. Students even could apply for jobs. Captain Poultry Week was from November 15th to November 19th. Winter sports started November 8th. Thanksgiving break was from November 22nd to November 26th. The Anigo Fab Lab held a special event on November 18th for pen turning and canvas prints. On November 29th, the high school began the new no pass protocol. That is, no passing during class time. If caught, you could be sent to lunch detention or possibly sent home. NHS has been working on vandalism posters and skits to show the students to help decrease it. And there's also a petition going around the school to bring back passes. As of before this meeting, there was 706 people that signed it, and apparently someone met with our principals and they said that nothing got done, so they're going to try and plan a walkout. And they said that will be Thursday between 5th and 6th hour.
Okay, is that 700 students signed that petition or 700 people?
700 people. I know I seen that it went on Facebook and a lot of parents might have signed it. A lot of people
Okay.
were just sharing it around.
Do we have that on the agenda tonight at all? Or can we talk about that right here if we don't?
You can ask Tori questions. Or
Julie, do you think we're gonna keep that policy, or do you think we should bump it or modify it somehow?
Mr. Rogers can come up too. When I was approached by it, I know it, well, I should just let you speak instead of speaking for you.
So there's 3 bullet points.
Mr. Rogers?
Microphone.
Thank you. There were 3 bullet points that had been sent home to families, and those bullet points are that we'll continue the sweep protocol, and there will be no passes given unless it's an emergency or the student has an appointment. Students must get their bathroom needs taken care of between classes. We have a 43-minute class period with a 5-minute passing period in between classes. And yes, it is possible that students will get sent home with that. And you know, when looking at this no pass policy, you know, we got feedback from students through advisory, we got feedback from staff through a staff meeting, and our advisory leadership team had met on this as well. And we're at a state where we don't have time to be reactive. You know, our test scores were mentioned already today, and we're not in a good spot, and we have to have students in front of certified teachers, really good teachers that are instructing, but they have to be there. And a 43-minute time period is not an extended amount of time to be there in instruction and getting instruction. We know that emergencies do happen, and teachers have been instructed on how to handle those emergency occurrences. You know, we've spoken with a number of parents, a number of students on challenges that this may present, and that parent communication has been very positive in the fact that they understand the need for kids to be in there in instruction. They clearly understand that and are very supportive in that, and a lot of the students understand that as well. Even though they're unhappy with some of the the processes that are going on because of that. And we're not trying to be tyrants. We're trying to get, you know, the best learning environment that we can for the students. So in talking with some teachers about it, they're saying, wow, the distractions, the disruption are so much less. And a couple of them came up and thanked me between yesterday and today. So just some stats for you. Between yesterday and today, 8 students were sent home on Monday. 5 students were sent home today. There were no repeat students that had gotten sent home. You also may have heard something about, the bathrooms are crowded. On Monday, 3 times checked that were checked on one bathroom, there were 0 lines in either the boys or the girls. And 8 out of 8 times another bathroom was checked and there were 0 lines in either the boys or girls. Today, 5 out of 5 times the commons bathroom was checked during passing periods. There were 0 lines in either bathroom. And 2 out of the 3 times that the science bathrooms were checked, there were 0 lines. The one time that there was, Mrs. Maddock had walked 2 students to class after they had finished going to the bathroom.
Mr. Rogers, can you clarify what a lunch detention is? Because it seems to me lunch is so short.
Yep.
How can kids eat and get a detention?
Students will go and eat with the teacher that has that duty that day. And usually it's room 128. It's a room just down the way from the lunch area.
Okay.
Some of the emails we got today said that the kids who were disruptive out in the hallway were now being disruptive in the classroom. Do you think that's true generally, or just I don't know, one class?
I wouldn't say that's true generally. I would have to be, I'd have to know more specifics on that situation. I wouldn't say that's generally true. And, I talked with a couple teachers and they had considered coming and speaking on that. Because, like I said, they had shown appreciation for that. And I appreciated that because I knew that when this advisory leadership team had gotten together and looked at our feedback from our student advisories and our staff meetings, that this would create an issue. But at the same time, that committee had talked about that students are part of our school community. And implicitly, they are subject to some protocols that are going to benefit the student body. And when I make an analogy to parents and when I talk with some students about that, I likened it to a road construction piece where the speed limit is lowered in road construction because we got to fix the road. Well, our speed limit is lowered right now on our passes because we need to fix the emphasis on being in class during instruction.
How big of a problem, how many days have we been doing this, and how big of a problem was it that kids were just asking for passes constantly and then not coming back, essentially, so they'd be gone for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something instead of walking to the bathroom and coming back? Or
We've been doing it for 2 days.
2 days.
Yep.
Okay, but it's mostly you were worried that kids are dodging class on purpose?
To a degree, there was a lot of damage that had been going on in the bathrooms, which was resulting in sometimes the bathrooms were locked because that damage couldn't be repaired immediately. We had done some different attempts with trying to remedy that, but it wasn't happening during passing time. It was happening during class time, where students would be leaving class for one reason or another, and the no pass thing was only part of it. We talk about if a student leaves class without permission, then they'll be sent home. And that was a consistent challenge too, because when that student would leave class. They may go to their friend's classroom and summon them out, and then they would be venturing somewhere where they shouldn't be, or going into the bathrooms and recording those darn TikTok videos. And that would be causing some damage, either emotionally or physical damage to the bathroom. I say emotionally because of, some of those TikTok challenges have been really emotionally scarring for some kids.
Meredith, tell me again, so you think people hate it so far, or what was your feedback aside from 700?
It's
Tori, I'm sorry.
What was that?
Tell me, people hate it so far, or is that?
I've heard around the school that a lot of people are upset. Me personally, I think it's working. I've heard people in the hallway say, I've got to get to class, otherwise I'm going to be sent home, and my parents won't like that. And those kids are actually going to class now. So I think it's actually working. I myself am able to go to the bathroom during passing time and get to class on time. Every time I go to the bathroom, there's never a line. So I think other kids could do it as well. But I do hear them complain a lot, with females and their monthly friend, like that happened today, that's an emergency, and the teacher had let that student go. So I think it's working. I think it's great.
Is that an easy thing for the female student to get that exemption for the emergency?
Well, they have to inform the teacher that, hey, I have an emergency and I need to go. So,
Okay, so the teacher then determines whether it's an emergency or not, right?
the instructions to the teacher was that if a student comes up to you and says that it is an emergency, then they record the student's name and time, and then we'll know if the emergencies are consistently happening and we need to get that student some other type of assistance.
Okay, so what if it's one of the students that is habitually in the hall, not in class, and is now being forced to go to class, has an emergency? Are they going to get a pass to go?
Yes, but that's why we're documenting that student's name and time, so if it continues to crop up, then we will know.
Okay, so what if they don't come back to class? What if you give me a pass and I'm one of these TikTok people in the bathroom doing my thing, and you give me a pass and I don't come back? Who comes to find me?
Usually it's one of the administrators or Mr. Stager, our behavior specialist.
Mr. Rogers, can you use the microphone? Thank you.
Usually it's one of the administrators or our behavior specialist, Mr. Stager.
Okay, I guess when I first heard this last weekend from some students that were telling me about this, I knew one of them right away is a lot like I would have been being told, okay, no passes. It's like a head game for me. And it's like a nervous, oh my God, I can't go, I mean, what am I going to do? And I just think that I was trying to think of ideas of ways that you could do the passes, let the kids, do as they were. And I hate to say what I'm going to say, but maybe you could set a little workstation up outside the bathrooms, and teacher that had a prep time could maybe do some work out at a little table and supervise the bathrooms, and then you'd have somebody supervising the halls. And having been a teacher for as long as I was, I hate that I just said on prep time they could do another duty, because that's...
They did it when I was a kid.
What?
They did that when I was in school.
What, sat outside the bathrooms?
We had hall monitors. And if you quit teaching them this crap about racial stuff, they wouldn't hate themselves and everybody else and do damage.
Okay,
Teach
Mary.
them reading, writing.
Okay, wait,
Engage in
I know, I'm sorry. I just think, I don't know what I think. I mean, I hear all sides of it, just like I've been hearing all sides of everything for the last year and a half. And I get all sides of it. I just think
you know, you said it was to create a better learning environment, but I'm also hearing that it's more of like a discipline tool. You're keeping the kids out of, you know, from being able to use the bathroom to prevent destruction in the bathroom or damage in the bathroom, or these kids just wandering the halls. I guess, too, it's changed where if I was teaching and a kid just got up and left the classroom, well, that wasn't okay. And you went after the kid and you got the kid back. And if it was at the high school, you called and there was an administrator or somebody there immediately to help. I guess I'm just, it all comes around to the discipline aspect and everything else, and being unable to discipline or raise your voice, or, you know, and I'm not talking corporal punishment, of course I'm not. I'm just saying the kids seem to be running things. And I think that's part of the problem all the way around that affects the achievement levels and everything else. And so, I don't know. I just think that, I don't know.
When I
I think
was
there has to be another way.
When I was teaching at the high school, every student had a planner, and if you had to leave the room, the teacher had to sign the planner what time you left the classroom. Is that still a policy that's in place now?
It's still the policy. That was our policy previous to this, and now even if they, you know, if they got that emergency designation, they still need to have that planner or a pass, because lots of students, I shouldn't say lots, some students don't bring their planner or misplace their planner. And honestly, this year we ran out of planners. We had an influx of students this year that we didn't really expect coming into our school. So we usually give ourselves a buffer of about 75 to 100 planners for new enrollments, and we burned through those because some kids forgot them and they purchased a new one, and additional enrollments, and then they're.
So you just ran out.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing from a few more board members if anyone else wants to talk about it. Have you considered like letting kids with A's and B's do the normal policy?
No, we haven't. That's. I guess I'll just leave it at that right now. No, we haven't.
I wonder if that would be, I don't know, some sort of compromise, because presumably those kids are probably not abusing the bathrooms as much, but maybe that's.
Go ahead, Tori.
I'm just saying, like, most kids who have A's and B's are responsible enough to know to use the bathroom, and like typically don't want to leave class.
Okay, I think we'll go
So,
on.
do you
Unless
have-
there's more questions.
My daughter is a senior in college right now, graduated from Anago, and this was a topic over Thanksgiving break. And I can recall back when the Red Robin Awards were given, and I would ask her, why are you not getting any Red Robin Awards? Her response was, because I'm not a bad student. Because bad students, Mary has even said this too, bad students seemingly are the ones that are getting the Red Robin rewards. Because if they're good for a couple hours, then they get rewarded. So my son, who is a junior in high school with Mr. Rogers, said, Dad, I don't understand why it is that all the students are suffering for the few. Now, I don't know how many the few is. I didn't ask his opinion. But that just kind of went over in my mind why everybody suffers for the few. And I'm sure that Mr. Rogers and his team has kicked that around the table as well, what we can do. I like what JD said, A's and B's students, you know, give them some more latitude. That's a reward of being an A and B student. Nathaniel even came off and said, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said his name. Why aren't the students even asked their opinions about what is going on? And why isn't there a survey? I don't know, was there a survey?
There was a discussion in the advisories,
Yeah.
and I've got a collection of points here from those advisory discussions.
Mr.
That's just
Rogers,
I'm
what
hearing.
is an advisory? Is that homeroom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tori, do you think a lot of kids are suffering?
It's hard. Like, for me, I'm in like the advanced classes, and a lot of kids are there most of the time. So we don't really complain that much because we never typically leave class. So I don't really know the perspective with other kids in like normal classes. So it's hard to say.
I'll just share feedback. I routinely and for several years now, feedback has been the struggles with students in the hallways during class time, and not just the staff time to address those few students, but more so the distractions to the classes in session. And so I understand that this is a very difficult situation to navigate. I applaud the administration for seeking some kind of problem solving and solutions, and I think either way it's going to be a difficult resolution to combat that because it is impacting the learning of students within the classroom. And I think that's slightly overlooked within this discussion is the impact on the staff trying to teach and the students in the classroom. Mr. Rogers, has anybody been told no when needing an emergency pass?
Not to my knowledge.
I appreciate the data you shared. I think it's helpful. My recommendation would be to continue the data collection regarding blinds during passing period. That's certainly a significant concern and reasonable. And I had another thought too on a data collection point. Now I just lost it. So if I think of it, I will add it here. Otherwise, I will send an email. But I do think it's helpful to gather information to determine if it is having negative impacts on students and limiting in the situations of emergencies. Right now, it doesn't seem like it is. But I share that that's been a significant concern that I hear very, very frequently from staff, from students, and from parents. So that's my feedback.
Thank you. I do have a AHS parent volunteer sign-up list with me tonight, and that is something that we as a staff had talked about, as enlisting, parent volunteers to help, maybe during some of those classroom times, or to help monitor some of the bathroom activity. So if you're listening at home, please send me an email. My email is crogers@antigoschools.org, or if you're here tonight, I do have a paper and pencil sign-up list.
So essentially, they'd be like hall monitors, or?
It's something we're considering. They would have to, go through the volunteer background check protocol. But that's something we were kicking around.
Can we put this on the agenda for the next meeting, just so we can talk about it again? I don't know if it should be an action item or not, or think about if you should do the A's or B's, how disruptive it is if the students walk out. I don't know. I don't know if that's better or worse.
My original thought on that, JD, was just, I don't want to, if you've got a C student and they're trying to work their tail off, I don't want to.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to determine, because you can have a C student who works harder than an A or B student, and that is as good. I mean, they're doing the best they can, so that's really hard. That's really hard to.
I'm not discounting some idea like that. I'm just my original thoughts.
What constitutes a student in good standing? And that's a tough call.
I mean, you could just pick a GPA.
Yeah.
Percent.
Well, and I guess I look too. We're at the, we're, by the time Christmas is through, we're almost going to be at semester, and I think at this point, I don't know how many classes are only semester classes or quarter classes, but at this point, the staff, the teachers should know their kids and be able to trust their kids. And if Tori said, can I have is it all right if I have a pass and go to the bathroom? I know that Tori's always in class. I know she's doing to work. I'm just saying this, I'm sure you are, or you wouldn't be sitting there.
Yeah.
You know, I would be able to trust her to go and come back. And you know, the kids that you don't trust, they know you don't trust them. So maybe they need to start earning your trust. You know, doing things, you know, in class, getting their work done, being respectful, being on time. Maybe that would be a way they could earn it. I don't know, that's just a thought too. And yes, and I agree with Jill about the distraction to the teaching and to the kids that are there to learn. There's nothing worse than having disruption in the classroom when everybody else is trying to learn and there are so many distractions. And so, yeah, just some thoughts.
I did appreciate the email that you passed along to us, Mr. Rogers, with the parent feedback that offered us a thought solution with, you know, X amount of passes allowed per week. I think there's logistical things to discuss there too, but I guess I wanted to share that feedback, that I appreciated the parent offering a type of solution as well.
That's exactly what I was going to ask Mr. Rogers. I'm sure that you have gotten a whole lot more emails than what we have. Have there been any suggestions, ideas that have surfaced that have come to the top from parents?
The email that Jill
like
was
that,
referring
okay.
to that was one of the few with suggestions. If I remember, you know, approximate, I think there were about 3 that offered some suggestions. The rest were not.
I know there is like a student in good standing at the high school. I'm part of it, and where you can leave during study hall. So if maybe possibly those kids who are on the list could have a pass.
What are the requirements for that?
I know like it goes based off of your grades at the time. So if I were to like be quarantined and I had an F, I would be ineligible to leave until my grades were back up to A's and B's.
I think touching on what Mary said, by the end of the first quarter, I think the teachers have a pretty good read on which students will not abuse a privilege. So, and I think the teachers have a good call on that.
Okay, I think we'll move on. And Mr. Rogers will be back at the next meeting to give us an update on this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go on to the consent agenda. Somebody like to make a motion?
I move the board approve the consent agenda, including minutes from the October 26, 2021 meeting, Board of Education meeting, financial reports for October 2021, consideration of current bills, checks number 5234 through 5306 in the amount of $246,407.05. ACH is number 212200345 through 212200439 in the amount of $753,268.98, and one wire transfer in the amount of $16,928.22 for a total of $1,016,604.25.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? And we'll just go ahead with the roll call.
Bardo,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
and Mary.
Yes. And we'll go on to new business, and item A is approve the committee of the whole minutes from November 9th.
I move the board approve the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting on November 9th, 2021.
Second that.
Any questions or comments or corrections on these? Then all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. We'll go on to item B, policy manual review, the 6,000 finances. Did anybody have anything they want to bring up here? Okay, then we'll just go on to item C. District report card and forward exam results.
Thank you. So while Amy Doms and Megan Murphy are preparing to share on the screen, the attachment is in board docs, and I would just like to introduce this to you. As you know, the report card data was released, and the one state assessment that we had not yet reported on was the forward exam. Dr. Bartow, I learned that on November 9th, when you referenced a speaker's test scores, that's what they were, the forward results. I'm not sure which grade levels, but tonight you'll see those results as well, which along with the ACT Aspire and ACT make up the assessment pieces that are incorporated into our report card scores. So this just tells you the 4 priority areas. This first slide here, they are weighted differently by different levels. So we'll talk more about that later. But the 4 areas are achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on track to graduation. And you'll see how one of those areas or more can really significantly impact a score at a certain level. So here are the state's rating categories. I'm sure after looking at the results you saw, like we did, that our highest ranking school was the middle school this year. That these are scores from last year, but when they were reported, meets expectations. And then we had our district stayed in the meets few expectations, like it was 2 years ago when scores were last reported. And we also had 2 elementary schools meeting expectations, and then 2 schools failing to meet expectations. One point down below I really want to share with you is a highlight for us, test participation. In fact, just today JD shared an article with me from Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty that talked about how inappropriate it is to put much stock into the forward exam results when the test participation from the state of Wisconsin was so low compared to other years because of COVID and kids not being in school. And this is the perfect time to give a shout out to our administrators and staff members who last year, even our remote learners, we did whatever we could to have them come in and take the test. So it was in my letter, but we had 91% of our eligible students tested. And that is above the state average, which was an 84. So that's one point I'm extremely proud of. And with that, I'll turn the rest of the data points and the slide sharing over to Amy and Megan.
All right, is that on? Yeah, okay. Hi, I'm Amy Doms, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. So this report is kind of a combo of, earlier in the year we had talked about our continuous improvement plan, and one of the data sources that was missing at that time was the forward exam because that data was still embargoed. So we'll review some of that data in relation to our student testing, but also to update in the recently released November school report cards. So last year there were no report cards because of COVID. There was no testing the previous year. And the state report card really puts a lot of emphasis on the forward exam results. So they had no basis and they kind of revamped them a little bit. So if you're somewhat familiar with the report card, they've changed it slightly so that it's not exactly the same as it used to be. And this was like the new iteration, this release in November. So here you can see that for our schools, different schools have different priority areas. And Julie mentioned there's 4 categories. And you can see here that those categories do not stay the same at our levels, even from elementary to middle and to high school. So if you look at the left, our high school scores, the achievement portion of our report card is only about 12.5%. That's factored into the overall score. The larger area is growth, and then on track to graduation, then target group outcomes. So target group is your lowest scoring group in your school and looking at how they're scoring compared to other lowest scoring groups in the state. When you look at the middle school, the achievement portion that's reported in that score is only about 5%. So that is going to be a significant difference when we talk about elementary. And then also their growth score is a lot higher. It's about 48% is considered in their overall score. Target group outcomes are similar to the high school, and then also on track to graduation. Now when we look at our elementary schools with our 4K3 configuration, the achievement score for only 3rd graders take the forward exam is almost 3/4 or about 3/4 of that score. And then their on track to graduation is 25.
I thought before we consolidated, growth was a huge portion of the elementary school.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that a little bit more in our timeline, but that's true. So what happened with us consolidating to K3 or 4K3 schools is since they start taking the forward exam at 3rd grade, there's no opportunity for a growth score because they're not included in a 4th grade structure. However, elementary schools are compared to other elementary schools. So if you look at any sort of comparison, whether you're a K2 school, a K5 school, a K4 school, a 4K2 school, all elementaries are grouped into like a lump sum. Same for middle schools. So like our middle school is a grade 4-7 building, but we're compared in the majority to like a 6-8 on the most part because that's what most middle schools are. And then high schools, we have an 8-12 building is compared to a 9-12 building in most instances. So our comparison groups are a little bit different.
Okay, so tell me this again. So 3rd graders take the test and 4th through 7th?
So for forward exam, 3rd through 8th graders take it, and then 10th graders take social studies. And 4th and 8th grade take all 4 subject areas, whereas the others only take math and ELA. Okay, so on this slide you can kind of see a timeline of events, and why this is important is on the next few slides we'll show some historical testing data, and our configurations change. So you'll see in the year 2018, even though our 8th graders were part of the high school building, we still included them in the middle school structure. Heather and I at that time were overseeing the middle school 8th grade students at the high school. They were still reported in the middle school scores that year. So we do have data from that year. When we get to the next year, 19 and 20, that's when 4th and 5th grade joined the middle school building, and 8th grade would have scored as part of the high school building, and 4th and 5th would have scored as part of the middle school, but there was no testing that year. Okay, and then in spring 2020, that's when there was no testing, and then last year was the first year that we were in our new configuration where those 4th and 5th graders, their scores counted towards the middle school score, and the 8th grade counted towards the high school score. So just a little historical data. I apologize that that's cut off there at the bottom. I'm not sure why, but it just says that we welcomed both students in person and virtually last year for our testing period.
Are you going to get back to the achievement versus growth portion later, or should I bother you right now?
We'll show individual scores for schools in a few slides.
What's the achievement portion like in K3? Like, is it asking, can you find the main idea? Or is it's all asking, are you meeting these specific standards? Not actually, do you know these facts? Correct or not really? Someday you should bring us some questions from the achievement portion of that age range, just since that's normally we get weighted easier because we have higher poverty, but you don't when you get 75% achievement. There's no weights at all.
No. There's not a weighting system for the scoring. There's weighting in the scoring because they go back to historical data, like they will do 3 years ago has a weight factor of 0.5, 2 years ago has a weight factor of 1.0, 1 year might have a weight factor of 1.5. They've adjusted some of that formula process, but as far as weighting because of our demographics, no, there's not weighting related to that.
I think, I feel like I know what you're referring to, Judy. I know one of the links, I can try and find it quick, but there was something listed in one of the links. Maybe it was, there was something in terms of achievement scoring differently based on poverty rates, I thought. From DPI, maybe, I don't know, I'll try and find the link. I'm trying to think if it was maybe in your week in review, Julie.
I can look into that more too. That doesn't sound familiar to me, and in all of the learning, when these new report cards were coming out, we attended several sessions with our local CSAW and also DPI webinars to learn more about how they were scoring, but it's very comprehensive. They have a lot of formulas that go into this, so it's very possible that something was missed or that I didn't notice that. All right, so we're going to show some forward exam data now, which will kind of give an update, kind of like we did earlier in October with our other data sources, ACT. We shared some FastBridge data, and it's around our academic goal. And Megan will talk more about our forward exam trend data, and then also some areas to note in comparison to the state.
All right, we're going to start out with just looking at the district lens when we look at forward. So that's that 3 through 8 who take the forward exam. Starting with ELA, as you can see, we have our graph starting in 2016. We have consistently been trending downward. And as Amy talked about, our goal is to look at meeting or exceeding the state level. So the state also has been trending downward as well, and we saw a significant dip from the state in this last year. We also see us dipping off a little bit as well, but not as significantly as the state dipped. And then math, we see the state stayed a bit more consistent prior to COVID, and we were trending downward again. Our data point here from the last school year is consistent with that downward trend as well, but again, the state also overall, their scores went down. All right, so we're going to look at each level specifically. So looking at the elementary level in ELA.
Are you going to do schools next? Or no?
I don't think we've got schools specifically in here. But what we have by level is we saw that downward trend again prior to the COVID. And then what we have at the end is we went down a little bit, the state went down even more significantly. So when you look at that gap in 18-19, it was bigger than what the current gap is now. When we look at math scores at elementary, we see that same sort of trend with that significant gap in 18-19. While our scores went down, so did the state. That gap actually reduced. This was our largest gap reduction for any level, was in math in elementary. So we, at the middle school, do not see as significant as a drop here. And again, we see a little bit of a gap reduction, but we still see that trend downward both from the state and ourselves. Again, something to consider, I should have mentioned this beforehand, when you're looking at this graph, it's actually, because of that year that we didn't test, it's actually nice for data analysis wise to look at the graph and say, oh, prior was a different configuration of our schools. After, it's just nice, we didn't have to draw the line in for you. All right, middle school in math. We were consistent and we just bumped up a little bit in 18-19, and then we saw this last time that drop off again. But again, we're seeing the state drop off. So what I've really been tracking is that gap What it impacts the state impacts us as well. So how are we doing in comparison to the state is always something good for us to continue to monitor. And then looking at the high school, we see a slightly more dramatic drop in scores, both in ELA and on the next one for math. When we look at this last school year, we saw math previously trending slightly upward, and then we saw this significant drop off. So really all this is to say, this is kind of where we are just at. This is our new starting point. So Amy's going to start with a comparison to other districts around us.
Do we have individual school scores? I know it's not in this presentation. Does our district have it?
Yes.
Report card or forward data?
Oh, is it broken down and the results we get per school?
You can filter the data by school, yes. We didn't for this presentation, but that's consistent with how we reported out the other data earlier too. We didn't report it with individual elementaries, but when we look at our individual report card scores, we do have individual schools broken down.
Do
So.
the parents get sent the report?
From the forward exam? Yes, they do. There's a file kept in the student file and then also sent home for the parents. Yep. All right, so what Megan had shared was we're really tracking that gap growth, and we did have some areas where we did not significantly fall as much as the state fell in our scoring. And I know it was difficult to see in that graph in some locations, not all of the data points, but ELA and math at the elementary, the middle school had some gap reduction as well between us and the state. So I think those are some small celebrations to behold in light of coming off of a pandemic year. And this data, I just wanted to show some comparisons, and there's reasons why I chose some of these districts. The first reason is, if you recall back in October, I shared a list of about 10 districts that had similar demographics to us with our socioeconomic status and what percentage of students and families are in that category. Phelps and Rylander were on that list. Phelps is not really of similar size, but they were the closest actually to us in comparison. Rylander is somewhat of similar size to us. And then the other two schools, Elko and White Lake, are in our community. During COVID, we've heard a lot about resources and about maybe lack of resources in certain areas of our state. The next section of our meeting tonight, I'll share a little bit about Esser 3 and the stakeholder engagement that we hope to, and feedback we hope to get. But we have a lack of resources here, whether it be access to internet in some locations for our families, or it be access to mental health resources and things like that. So they're comparable in our demographic in our area of the state and also part of our county. On these graphs, you can see some of our testing rates are better than some of our other districts. I am interested to know how Phelps got every single one of their students to test, but that's very interesting to me. They are a very small district, but that was very interesting to me. All right, so now we're going to transition kind of from the forward exam data to report card data, but before we do that, I just wanted to pause for a minute and see if there were any...
Yes, clarify that again for me. Report card data is composed of forward exam and those 3 ACT, or...
So the high school would include achievement scores, which would include ACT scores, and it would include some forward exam, but forward exam ends at 8th grade, besides 10th grade social studies. It's a configuration. But then remember...
Oh, so what was the high school math score we saw that was so low?
That's also in there as ACT, and 8th grade would take math. I apologize, I should have maybe put what the tests are for each grade level. I apologize for that. Okay, so we showed earlier some of the configurations and how they're broken down in different percentages. That's true for a district score as well. So as Julie mentioned previously, we stayed in the same scoring range with meets few expectations. Here are the priority weight areas. So you can see here for the district, 8% of the score is based on achievement. 42% of our district score is on growth, And then the target group and the on track to graduation scores are about 25% for the district. So here you can see how that's scored out for each of those categories for our overall district score. So it takes each of those percentages, gives it a point allocation, and that funnels into an overall score.
If I could, Amy,
Yes,
just
go.
add one thought. When you consider that, and achievement jumps out in my mind also as being our primary focus. And it is a little crazy to me then that it counts as only 8% of our score. That is an 8, right? Thank you.
Yes, it's an 8.
But that's because the research says, and when we share our continuous improvement plan with you, we've talked about how you can't work on achievement in isolation. It doesn't work. Those other factors then all play a part of that. Student growth is weighted more heavily. So even if that student isn't achieving where we want him or her to be achieving, as long as they are closing that gap like Megan and Amy showed, that is actually going to count more as an advantage to us than if they scored really well on the forward exam or the ACT. It's very complex, but I feel more encouraged, even with dismal scores. I feel more encouraged when I look at that graph and the attention we are paying to other factors related to achievement.
So the growth is more likely to occur for the middle school because the testing is only third grade. So there's no growth achieved because it's only one grade level. So
Correct.
that's why the growth is going to...
There is no opportunity for a growth score at our elementaries. If we had a 4K through 4th grade configuration, then there's that one opportunity for growth between the 3rd and the 4th grade year.
Correct.
So you'll see in our next steps, I've talked with one of our CISA representatives about how do we start tracking and telling more of a data story for our elementary schools earlier than just that 3rd grade year, because that's such a lot of weight, especially when you see in a moment like how about 75% of that score really is based on 3rd graders one day showing up for this one test. That's a lot of stake in the game or skin in the game, whatever you want to say, when really there's a lot of good things and a lot of growth and progress leading up to that. How do we tell a more complete story? Because it's not very comprehensive.
Amy, I found it was in the link for the report card guide under priority area weighting, going back to the question or discussion about economically disadvantaged, and it states priority area weighting. Next to the space for the overall score is the pie chart displaying the weighting used when calculating overall scores. The weighting for achievement and growth varies depending on the percent of economically disadvantaged students in the school. In most cases, the weighting for target group outcomes and on track have equal weight, 25%, but these may vary if there is no target group outcomes score. So as you shared earlier, this is a very complex scoring model. So when JD mentioned that, I said that triggered what I read, so I found it and I wanted to share it at least.
I appreciate that, Jill. So does that include the forward exam then? Or just the report card? Because the report card for 3rd graders is only the forward exam.
When you say that, what do you mean by that?
I don't know. Yeah. So I'm confused. If Jill is saying the poverty percent determines the weight of growth versus achievement on the report card, and the report card for 3rd grade is only the forward exam, then we are massively losing out on our growth percentage for 3rd grade based on the way we set the schools up. So our score is going to be our achievement still should be much higher, obviously, but I just have this vague memory of Brian saying, look how gigantic growth is in our percentages, like 7 years ago or however long ago that was. But maybe I don't know, I was just, do you know what I mean?
I'm not really sure I'm tracking exactly what you're asking, to be honest with you. I think...
I think it's related to what Jill rediscovered, so if we could investigate that further and share out, I think that will address what you were
Yeah,
saying.
just whether, yeah, the growth should be a bigger factor in our report card for those elementaries, and it's not, based on the way we set it up. So
Right.
I don't know if, we'd almost be better off taking a test, first and second and third grade, so you could actually see growth instead of 1 year.
So that's actually a question that Julie and I did ask to DPI because there are a lot of unique configurations in the state of Wisconsin, and how they group is based on what the majority have as setups for elementaries. So 4K5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. We asked about would there be a possible comparison like grade level to grade level in the scoring as opposed to looking at school configurations where not a lot of schools might always fit into that configuration. We're not unique in the fact there are K2 schools. There are a lot of different configurations. They hadn't considered that yet, where it might be like we're just solely focused on comparing first graders to first graders across the state, or fourth graders to fourth graders across the state. That might be helpful in this kind of, and we could create our own kind of digital story or data comparison like you're alluding to, JD. Like that's what we're trying to emulate when we bring forward some of that FastBridge data for you, is to show like where are our kindergartners, where are our first graders in this data that we have. We just don't have it in like an overall scoring method like this is.
Amy, I just have a real quick question. Listening to what Jill read, what I heard was, does everybody's report card pie chart change with demographics?
To some degree, yes. So even when you look at our elementaries in comparison, you'll see in a moment they even vary slightly based on their school demographics. Not significantly, it'll still be about 3/4, 1/4, but there are some small nuances in the percentages because of their certain population.
Maybe they won't decide you take the third, even though our schools aren't together, let us have fourth grade count with our elementary schools, just so we have a reasonable score. But so what did they say? We just started searching new math curriculums, but maybe we say, because otherwise they're like, well, our reading curriculum that we bought 5 years ago, bad idea. Let's dump it. Let's bring Amy McGovern in, let her talk to us and say, let's buy something else. Would you say, terrible idea, don't do that? If we're going to work on math, our teachers are overwhelmed, we just make them learn all that.
No, you're kind of getting on a different topic, but we're working towards implementing a whole curriculum review cycle for not just math and ELA, but those are clearly two of the highest priority areas. Right now we're focused in the secondary on science and social studies. They haven't had a review or new resources in many, many years. Also at the same time, we have our K-12 working on math standards, and we have ELA work continuing and partnerships with Amy McGovern as well from CISA 9. Last year we started already evaluating some of our gaps and including different resources to help support the gaps that we were not seeing. Met with our student data, we noticed phonemic awareness and different early literacy skills that our students needed and addressed that, and have implemented programming to support that at our 4K and K level, and now even using that into first grade and beyond as needed. So I'm not opposed to anything, but it's always a balance. We have to be super thoughtful. I especially think often of our 4K5 teachers because they have all subject areas. So to think about revamping several things at once, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of really great teachers who are willing to do the work, but it's a lot of work outside of teaching our students each and every day. So looking at resources, deciding priority standards or what's essential, looking at new resources to better align to the new standards. We have to get some of those systems up and running and back in place in a manageable way for our staff. And we're working on that already. All right, so this is some of the scoring for the high school. You can see again some of those breakdowns of the different sections. They are scored in all 4 areas. So here, like what we would probably look to target as a school is how can we increase some of that growth score, because we know that that's such a high percentage of the overall score. How can we look at our students and ensure that they're looking to grow in their scoring methods as they continue in their, not only from forward exam, but then in ACT, Aspire, and ACT. Middle school, here are their priority areas in scoring. Here you can see achievement was about 50%, but remember that only accounted for a small percentage of the overall score. So this doesn't mean that 50% of the students are achieving. This is a numeric value that they're putting on the scores. So there's a lot of crafting of how they figure out these scores. So then that goes into an overall rating score. Now when we look at our elementaries, you'll see some of those nuances. So you can see all of their on-track scores are around 80, but they're not all perfectly 80, which is supporting that language that you found, Jill, in that document. And then all of the achievement are around 48 to 35, but those then feed up into their overall score. So not all of them get the same amount of weight necessarily, nor do they score the same.
How many tracks, I forgot, do each of our elementary schools have?
2 or 3.
2 or 3. So how big is the 3rd grade class at West? Is that 2 tracks, 15 kids each? Is that when you, or is,
it depends on the school and the grade and the year. Something that we learned through this process too was last year there were a lot of students that were transferring in and out for whatever reason. Families were moving, maybe students started off at homeschooling because of COVID and unsure of things, but then moved in mid-year, they felt more comfortable and wanted their students back in school. The only student scores that are reported in the report card are full academic year students. So for example, West could have had about 30 students at one point in time, but then for full academic year, there were only 21 student scores that were scored because they were the only ones that were there the whole year, even though at testing time, in reality, we tested more than that. But their scores did not count towards the overall score because they were not a full academic year student. And last year, there were a lot of transfers. And during the forward exam testing, we have to track all of that. Typically, we have a few transfers in and out when we're testing. We had almost 2 pages of kids transferring in and out, like on a single-space document throughout the district. So there were just a lot of movement. So that means a lot of student data isn't necessarily being represented in these overall scores.
Amy, I'm sorry. Can you just, I feel like it's still confusing for me with the achievement scores and 50% is saying 50% are achieving or not. Can you just, and I feel like parents watching would probably appreciate to, can you summarize again the achievement score determination?
So I'm not going to be an expert on exactly how that's determined, but when I talked earlier about how previous years have different weights, that's all factored into this as well. So they take historic data and give it less of a weight priority 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and they give those weight priorities and then they add them all together and do some averaging with it. I don't exactly know how that worked with COVID. Obviously they couldn't score, but usually they take the last 3 years and give them each a weight and a priority, which then factors into the overall achievement. So you're not just ever looking at kids right now from last year's spring testing, you're looking at least 3 years of historical data, but as you go out further, it's less weight in that academic data.
So kind of like an average, but not directly because each number is in. Okay.
Kind of.
when I think about this, and maybe I think about it wrong, so if growth was 80% of the score and achievement was 20, so the achievement 20%, let's say the kids only got 40% on the test, and the kids from a rich district got 70% on the test, just a normal test, so their achievement would be much higher. And because we have higher poverty, they choose to count growth more. And if we only had, but if you have a higher percentage growth, if we're teaching good, then they teaching well. So then let's say the first time the kids got a 20 on the test, but the next time they got a 40, they'd be really good on the growth. So then when they did good on the growth, and then that weight counts more on growth, then our overall score is higher. I don't quite understand complicated 3-year averaging that he's talking about. I don't know if
The 3-year averaging is looking at our 3 years, correct? Not state averaging, our scores for 3 years. Yeah, so growth may not necessarily reflect achievement.
correct. You can have low achievement but high growth.
There is a relationship there, though, between growth and achievement. I mean, if you couldn't just have growth without achieving more. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a correlation there, but
You would, I mean, I would hypothesize that growth and achievement would parallel each other, but they're not necessarily doing that. Right.
Right.
okay, so it is a lot of data and it's very complex. So I apologize for not having that more clearly laid out, like which tests and how this overall score is factored. A few years ago when I was a first middle school principal, we did have someone come in and explain the formula and how it's calculated. Now that's all changed a little bit, so they still kept some of the practices and some of the scoring, but it is different now, and they give school districts much more data. But our next step is we'll continue to update our continuous improvement plan. Again, mid-year we'll come to you in February most likely with our mid-year data. We won't have new data for exam, but we'll have new progress monitoring data with our FastBridge scoring and how our schools and students are doing in their growth and achievement related to not only each other and in our district, but also nationally how we're comparing. And then also we do want to work to create a more complete data story, as I had mentioned earlier, with our elementaries especially, with not being able to access that growth score. For our third grade students, that is something that we want to tell a more complete story of with our students because they are doing a lot of reading foundational work, especially at K and 1. You are learning so many skills so quickly and so many sub-skills in order to become a proficient reader. We're working already on how we track that and ensure that our students are becoming proficient readers, especially by the end of second grade into third.
Is FastBridge the one that each student's results have interventions provided?
Yes, there is an opportunity for you to print off not only an individual skills report, which shows what they have achieved or already mastered, what they are currently working on, and what are be upcoming skills, but there is also an opportunity to print off a skills intervention report. I don't think that's exactly the right name, but it's something to intervention report, where you could then have next steps for maybe following up from skills that they've lagged in or lacked previously.
So looking at creating a more complete data story, we could use the FastBridge with the interventions, and we could see by implementing the interventions, you would expect academic growth and achievement, which would then be reflected in the following year's individual student FastBridge results, correct?
Yeah, that's one intervention that we use. We also have other supports at our elementaries with Title I supports. We do a lot of reteaching in our classroom, small group instruction. Sometimes we intervene with different programs as well that are more direct instruction. Or we're also working on improving that system for our students so that we are honing in on their skills, exactly what they need at the right time, and targeting specific standards or specific skills with the right intervention for those students. That is one way. Also, the elementary too, they are already tracking things like attendance and related to on-track readiness for graduation. So telling more about are our students present and here and attendance rate, and how are they meeting those requirements as well in preparation for what will come to be a bigger picture when they get to the middle school and high school.
Yeah, I'm interested to learn more and have further discussion on the elementary with that discussion, because I feel like our report card is obviously very important. But we're starting that analysis at third grade, and so then what are we doing proactively for K through second to prepare for third grade's results that are then going to set the stage moving forward. So I feel like for me that's really important when I look at achievement in the common used way of saying achievement and growth. So it's just
The weirdest thing for me is always, you correct me here if I'm wrong, Amy, these tests are testing standards, not content. So like, if you're thinking of a typical history class, the teacher lectures for a while on the Civil War. And then you take a test on the Civil War, so you're actually testing if you learn something, content test. But if you're just saying the inference from this random passage, you're testing some random skills. And the biggest problem, I don't know, with reading curriculum in Wisconsin and the whole country, they're having this fight. If you lack background knowledge on the subject, you're going to miss the inference. But if it's a subject you know about, you're going to get the inference. I tell this story all the time, super vivid to me on the LSAT. You take this course, the law school admittance exam, and they say, don't use your background knowledge on this passage. Just try to answer it based on the passage. So when I got a passage that was on economics or political science, my background knowledge, I knew the answers all the way. I didn't have to use all these strategies to find the main idea and the inferences and what. But when you give me a passage on art history, I didn't know what half the words in the passage meant. My background knowledge was completely lacking. So I get them wrong. You know, you got a specific time. So that's why I'd be curious if you brought the questions. And that's why these tests, some people argue that states should have content tests. And then you actually know how well you're teaching, not the background knowledge that the student comes into the school with. And that's when we constantly argue, well, what's our curriculum list? You know, are we studying all these contents areas and are they building each year? Because otherwise, if you can test that somehow, I think even Louisiana started granting exemptions to the schools that were going to try to do content testing from their state report cards to make sure, because if you actually want to be able to read, you just have to know something about what you're reading. And we could pull out that whole soccer or baseball study where, you know, I should stop talking now so we get that. Go look up the baseball study on reading, and the kids who knew about baseball but are bad readers still do way better on the standard test than the kids who are good readers but don't know about baseball. Or just go check out the knowledge gap or something by Natalie Waxley.
Yep, you're right.
Okay.
Well, I asked Amy to put up the screen where it's talking district because obviously we're hearing that we have a problem in our configuration with third grade, but the scores that are basically for our district report card basically look at 3 through 8, partial 10, ACT, all that stuff. So it's probably a better look at our district. And the problem we have is that we don't rank very well across the board. So I went into the DPI site and I went to this page and they basically broke it into 5 different pages. And when I scrolled out to the right to look at, for example, on track to graduate 80.4, out to the right, there was more data. And it said, same or higher than this percentage of districts. Now, there's 420 districts. And on track to graduate, our score, same or higher than, was 7.1%, which basically tells us that 92.9% of the schools in the state score higher on this metric than us. And then I didn't use Common Core math, I actually did percentages based on the way I was taught way back when. And our rank is 390th, which means we score on our on track to graduate for 30th. That's how many we beat in the entire state. Achievement was 47.6. Our same or higher score was 6.1%. Our rank was 394, and we're equal or better than 26 schools in the state. Growth. Now, this one, because of what Amy was talking about with third grade, but this is our district score. And we ranked 2.9% better than other schools in the state. So our score was 408, which means we are better than 12. And then finally, target group outcomes, where we're attempting to help our disadvantaged kids due to income. Our score was same or higher than 1.9%. Our rank was 412, which means we're better than 8 schools in the state trying to help our low-income kids compared to the other schools in the state. This is a disaster. That's the only word I can come up with. We need to do better, and I'm not blaming our teaching staff. Not at all. Because we have too many other things going on in this district, and I will talk about that later.
Julie, is our overall ranking correct?
I didn't look at that, but 2 years ago that sounds about right, yes. I didn't look this year. It's not meant to be a ranking, although that's what people do. And I really had to stop myself from going there because that's not what it's meant for. So I focused on our scores, what we're doing, and how we can improve instead of comparing us to other districts.
Tori.
But that sounds...
So what is our rank of the score of 53.7? Julie, what is our rank of the 420 schools that we have?
I don't know, Danny. I assume what Dave shared just now is right.
Well, Dave shared a ranking of the target groups, the achievement and the growth, and on track to graduate. But
didn't you end with 412?
No, that was the target.
That was our target group outcomes rank.
Oh.
412.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Danny, I don't know.
So I got a spreadsheet from DPI that you can look at. Our rank in all the schools is actually 414 out of 420 schools. We are the 7th school from the bottom. So I just picked out, of that sheet that's being sent around, I picked out some schools that...
Dan, you move forward a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. Move on here. I don't have this problem at church. Of the schools that are on that list, I just picked out a few of them that's coming around now. And when I look at the rank of the schools, White Lake, obviously they're doing something right, and I don't know if the poverty level is any different at White Lake. I'm not there. I don't know what that is. But sometimes I think we might be using poverty level as a crutch rather than a help. So I look at White
Danny,
Lake.
what rank is what?
No, I'm not done yet.
No, just what rank is what?
White Lake is 65.
Okay, but hold that shit slide back up.
And Portland Pines is at 87. When I look at Milwaukee schools, they're 399. So this is just something for you to look at. This is more data for us to look at, just to see. In addition to the great job that Amy and Megan did, this is just more data that I personally received from an individual at DPI whenever I began to ask. One more thing I want to pass around is just a comparison to go all the way back to 2012, 2013. Our school report card total overall was 66.4 in 2012, 2013. This is the far as back as that I could go, that we all could go on the site. We all had this opportunity to go there. Our best was at the year of 15-16 is 72.6. We were right there, right below White Lake. White Lake was 75. But over the last couple of years, we see 2016, 17, 67.9, 17, 18, 66.2, 18, 19, 60.6, and then 2021, 53.7. I did include the high school numbers there just to include there. And these schools are just what's in our area, which also includes DC Everest. Amy, you said right, they did change that report card when that came out, and I started scrolling down. I thought, wow, this looks a lot different than it did in previous years. But they didn't only change the report card at DPI. They also, under the leadership of Jill Underley, they also changed the accountability score range that was not noted here tonight. In 2018 and 19, meets few expectations. Can you put the accountability score range on the screen so everybody can see what I'm saying? Okay, that's for this year, 2020, 2021. Meets few expectations has a low minimum of 48 with a maximum of 57.9. Whenever I say that not only did they change the look of the report card, apparently I was waiting for Andy to ask any legislative reports because I was prepared to give this one at that point. Jeremy Thiesfeld, the state representative of the 52nd State District, sent out a document that showed that in 2018 and 19 that meets few expectation had a low of 53 and a high of 62.9. Representative Thiesfeld says that this is the equivalent of scoring a touchdown at the 20-yard line instead of reaching the end zone. Students do not benefit from the manipulation of these numbers. It is a clear attempt to manipulate media reporting on the report cards to help insulate DPI, school administrators, and school boards from accountability for poor decisions and performance during 2020. He has a lot of other things to say that you have that copy there in front of you. I would say that some of our declining number of our overall report card could be due to the fact of ICS for equity. And the reason I say that is because there have been several teachers that have contacted me over the last few weeks and said they could teach if they didn't have to do all of the ICS for equity. Jargon was one of the words that one of the teachers told me. So I think I agree, Julie, this is a dismal report. I like to say there's nowhere that we can go but up, but there are 6 schools underneath us that we could continue to go down. I don't want to go down. I would like to see what we can do to get the achievement scores up, to get the not just for the sake of the standardized testing. I get that, JD, with the standardized testing. I understand that completely. What is the content? What are our kids learning in the school is more important to me than a state standardized test. However, those scores come and they are published throughout the whole state as a reflection of what's going on in our district. So what we need to do is to, I'm going to go a little bit country here, is pick ourselves up by our boot latches and tighten up some things and really evaluate what is going on from the top to the bottom, right to left, inside and out, in order to help our students to grow in that achievement gap. We have great teachers. We have awesome teachers. But there's a teacher that came to me not long ago and said, Danny, I am already February, March tired. And that is from a teacher who is way up here, in my opinion. I'm already February, March tired. That really spoke a lot to me. So what are we doing with our in-services, with our staff? What are we teaching them? Are we teaching them how that they can go into the data and look at those students one by one? What does Danny need to help him to overcome achievement? Or are we pushing in our in-services the ICS for equity? The board is no longer there at any of the in-services where we were invited before. I'm sure that invitation is still there, I just haven't heard it. So we don't know what's going on at the in-services. All that I can hear is what teachers have come to me and said. I'm not ready to throw the proverbial towel and quit and give up, because that's not the right thing to do. I'm ready to roll my sleeves up and say, what can I do? What can we do? Just as I've asked you many times, when you first came, Julie, what can we do to support you and to pick you up? Well, what can we do to pick up our achievement scores? And this data that I gave to you is not any secret. It's out there for anybody to have. Amy's shaking her head because they're there. She's probably seen all this. There's just a little more info for you.
Danny, do you have any specific, maybe we'll get into this grant thing later. I'm sure I read some stuff about it, and lots of stuff in there I don't agree with, but do we have any specific examples of what our students are hearing that is actually, like, do you have any specific things that that what is interfering with their teaching about the grant?
Well, JD, I'll take it.
Thank you.
No problem.
I would like to.
Thank you, Dave, because I didn't have the material in front of me, JD, to help answer.
I mean, I bought their book. It's called Leading for Social Justice. Well, back in July, I received from an educator in another district telling me CRT was here. And so I started checking out ICS for equity. Now, I know there are 13 modules. I know that on Monday, Module 7 was started because I received copies of what our teachers were supposed to read. So basically what Module 7 started with was the first 6 modules that our teachers were reading on Monday, correct?
Are you asking me if they read the first 6 on Monday?
No, they read the information about the first 6.
Correct.
To get ready for 7. So it was like a refresher.
Yes.
Of the first 6 modules. So I'm going to read, because what came to me in an email, and then I got more information, and it was said that, gee, this sure looks like CRT to me. And then I read what was sent to me. So I'm going to tell you about Module 1, the refresher course. As we have learned in Module 1, Step 1, the current structural and instructional practices in school districts across the country are deficit-based. Specifically, our current system is premised on a deficit perspective that purports that the primary reason for student failure is the students themselves. We contend that the student is not the problem, as the educational system has been historically constructed to maintain a white, cisgender, straight, middle class, able-bodied, English-speaking, male normative. The educational system then perpetuates oppressive and marginalizing practices for students who do not fit such a normative, and in so doing denies them access to high expectations and quality learning. So that was what they had our teachers read on Monday during in-service. Now, it sounds to me like CRT, because I'm going to go back through what they said. A white, cisgender, I had to look that one up.
What does it mean?
What it means is that if you are born with the Y chromosome, you're a male. And if you don't have the Y, you're a female, and that's how you identify yourself. Straight, I think we know what that means. Middle class, able-bodied, we're not disabled. English speaking, and the male normative. Well, what the male normative is that males back when determined what was good and what was bad in our social settings. Now, when I was a superintendent, I always believed that when we had an in-service, it was teaching our teachers with the expectation that what they were taught to help have a better school was to take it into the classroom. And if it's bad for this district to be white, cisgender, straight middle class, able-bodied, English-speaking, and male normative, we have a problem.
So I'd like to respond to that.
Because that is CRT.
Keep in mind, however, though, and I felt like something you said earlier was an indication when you talked about scores that one of the reasons our achievement isn't where we want it to be is because we're spending time on that in the classrooms. Students have not had any access to that information that you just shared. We're in the, I see you agreeing, Torrance, yeah. So the learning, the ICS modules, that has all been adult learning, and that's all it's for. It's not for students to learn. 2 years ago when we started, it was all administrative learning. This is the year now that staff is learning, and the reason for that, Dave, is because we have so many students who do not fit the description you shared. And even if we focus on just that description, look at our scores. What we're doing for that homogeneous group that schools were originally built around, that's not working for us. It's not our system, meaning Antigo. Our educational system isn't excessively helping any student over any other. We are not achieving or meeting the needs of students across the board. So this learning by DPI is our attempt at doing a better job, just like the board approved the mission and vision for each and every one. We can no longer afford to focus only on, and I'm not saying we did, I've been here 4 years now, but students don't fit any type of mold anymore. They just don't. So we had to broaden our understandings, expectations, and abilities. That's why we're learning about how to be more inclusive so that each student stands the same, not the same. Each student has the opportunity to be successful. We were missing the boat with deficit-based thinking.
Okay. So, going from there, if you remember, I had asked for what we spend on ICS. I didn't get that. I got what was the grant, zeroing out of the grant. So is ICS giving us all this modules for nothing?
That's all part of the grant. That's where we get the modules.
Okay.
Only grant members have access to the modules.
So now we have a district leadership team and a 5 school-based teams. Okay. Is it true that all our members on the school-based team are getting $2,000 per year?
Of course, the board approved that.
When?
When we changed
3 years ago when we changed
the
our
setup.
structure.
So then in essence, those 35 people are getting $2,000 a year. for ICS, correct?
For being members of the school leadership team, it's not synonymous with ICS.
Well, I was told that you have 2 district meetings per month for the district leadership team.
That sounds right.
School leadership team meets from 3:30 to 5 o'clock once a month. Have an all meeting, an all staff meeting that includes instructional staff once per month. And I've been told that every one of those meetings only deals with ICS training.
I didn't hear what you said. Only what?
ICS training.
I would say no, because the school leadership team has other responsibilities regarding the learning.
Okay. So I guess I'll be asking more questions in the future.
Certainly.
Because, oh, that reminds me of something.
I do want...
On September 27th, when Danny and I met with you, I provided you with a document. You ran it, or maybe it was Mary Kay ran it off, so that I left that with you. And I asked on that date for a list of every one of the books that's in these 13 pages that are in our district libraries and in our staff. And I've waited over 2 months now. I'm assuming that got forgotten.
No, you and I don't always connect on what I believe the question is, so I'm going to have to clarify when we meet in the future. I did have Bonnie DeHart run that.
Was it ever sent to me?
No.
Of course not. But I'm just going to read for the group that's watching 13 pages, and the title is ICS for Equity Recommended Identity Development Resources.
For adults who may have a student in their classroom and want to do a better job.
So you're telling me that some of these books aren't in our high school library?
That's not what I said, but that list was
okay.
That list was available for adults.
Yeah, for our teachers.
To help their practice.
Okay. Well, I think the people who pay our taxes in this district would like to see the listing of these books. And I'm not someone who is a book burner, but these books should be bought by parents who want their children to read it, not in a school district for a student to get. That's just my opinion. But these will be put out on media to the public.
Story question for you. When I was in high school a long time ago, I thought lots of kids didn't try. And then the state legislature said, we're going to have a high school graduation test. And that, I remember sitting in homeroom and being scared. And then they wimped out and didn't do it. Do you, so the ACT score, everybody has to take it now. I assume lots of kids don't try. We get some really low scores. If we made you have a minimum ACT score to graduate from Antigo, do you think kids would try harder?
Maybe. I know I've heard many stories about kids who literally just click C the whole time through the ACT.
Wait, say that again?
They just click C for every answer on the ACT because they didn't care. So maybe, possibly, but I know some kids do try and they still score low. I do have friends who tried really hard, but they are terrible test takers and they just didn't get a good score.
If it was up to you, what number would you make that? 16?
It's hard to say.
Give me a guess, just out of curiosity. We're probably not going to do this. I'm just hypothetically thinking of what makes kids try harder.
Maybe like a 15.
I think that'd be an interesting thing to do. If we can't have intrinsic motivation and we really want to improve scores.
Julie, earlier mention what we're doing isn't working and we're excluding. I just struggle to understand how our district specifically, not districts in general, but our district inherently excludes students. Like, how are we doing that we need to shift? Because I feel like we do a very good job of meeting our students where they're at. And inequality, I go back to equity versus equality. It's not differentiators. You're meeting the student where they're at, what their needs are, but like demographics don't play a role specifically in that. You're providing the equal access for equal opportunities, for equal opportunities for successful outcomes. I guess I just struggle to understand how we inherently disadvantage students. In what ways do we do that? Do we have to shift?
I don't know that the word is inherent or phrase is inherently disadvantaged as much as we need to do a better job for each and every student to make sure it goes back to that like grading on a bell curve, and all of those former practices that we did, I myself included, that we know better now. And the students that I see in our schools today aren't the students that I saw when I was teaching. Yeah. So our practice has to evolve with our customers, our students. What worked in the 90s likely doesn't work anymore. Some things do, I'm not saying everything, but we need to evolve. That's really as simple as I can say it. When Dave and Danny did meet with me, we talked about teachers who might feel uncomfortable. They don't know how to address or how to work with students who present differently than they have worked with before. And so this is a simplified way to equip each teacher to be better prepared for who walks in their door.
Yeah, I guess my struggle, and if I'm somebody watching right now, who walks through your door doesn't matter, because you're going to treat them with respect and dignity, period. So you're still offering the same service, the same support. You're still meeting them at where they're at. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's where my disconnect is what that goes back to the inherently disadvantaging. How are we doing that?
Was that my term? Because I don't remember saying that.
No, it was my term, but it was based off of the categories maybe that Dave listed off, the male, white, middle class, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So that's where I'm struggling, is we have to shift our focus, because what districts generalized are doing isn't working. But looking at our district, how is our district then not providing equal access and supports for equal outcomes? Right, like what? I guess that's where I'm struggling. And I've been asked this by other parents or people in the community. So I guess the other part of my question is not just from my own understanding, but asked this before too. Because I'm sharing feedback and I don't know the answer. And so that's why I'm asking.
I don't have an answer. I'm not sure I completely understand the question.
You're asking essentially why you think we need this training, because you're assuming our district does not discriminate against anyone on any categories.
Right, like why would we?
And I don't know, if I was answering and I don't know the answer, it's just, you would say it was a national trend pushed out. Mm-hmm. And that would be...
And we did, with Megan's help, look at our own district data. I'll use the example that we shared at a previous meeting about males not achieving at the same level as females in English language arts. That's curious thing to me. I don't know why that is, but I think it's valuable to know that. And what can we do about that?
Right.
While working on our universal, because when you talked about fast bridge interventions before, I didn't interrupt, but I was thinking in my head, yes, interventions are great, but that's second level. The best chance we have at instruction and learning is at the universal level, in the classroom with that teacher. That's better than any pull-out program, any intervention, and that's really what the entire grant, if you will, in our continuous improvement plan is designed to do, to be proactive instead of reactive. So we also learned a lot on the in-service days about C3 teams and collectively working together to present instruction the first time and doing that differently so that we come closer to having more kids get it the first time and we're not in that vicious cycle of remediation that history suggests does not work.
So in our recent in-service days, the proactive versus reactive, in my mind, I think we know the report card's coming out, we know the PD days are scheduled, so what can you share a little bit about how our results were discussed and like action steps identified, or if did that, I guess I'm taking an assumption, is that discussed in our most recent PD days?
I would say staff meetings, again, I would look to building level leaders. I did not discuss it as a full level on PD day, but I know at building level, especially by department, to dive into that data, and that's what we're hoping for, and that discussion actually continues tomorrow at Admin Council.
I appreciate that.
Tori, how much homework do you get a night?
I have homework every night.
Like an hour, 4 hours?
Well,
Every subject, too much? Just curious.
right now I'm in A push, AP US history, and there is quite a bit of homework in that class, and I probably have like about an hour just for that subject each night. So then that's not my other classes that I take. So it can be like 2-3 hours of homework that I have to do. And plus I work in study hall and in homeroom.
So that's a fair alert. I mean, that's a decent amount of work for high school, 2 or 3 hours, especially hard if you're doing sports.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Do you think, Amy, how much homework do we assign? Like, I know elementary school, we try not to do homework in this day and age. Is that?
I would not be a very good gauge at this moment of how much homework per se is given out at each level. I mean, when I was at the middle school, I could speak more eloquently to that, and I know that a big encouragement at our elementary schools is to reinforce reading at home, but I guess I'm really not sure. I couldn't give a good answer, and I'm not really sure why you're asking.
I'm just curious. Some people argue it doesn't help. It always helped me when I studied things that matter. Then I learned them better because memory is repetition of thought. And we have to learn more content knowledge about something to do better on these tests. If that's what we want to do, we need to do something.
Andy, I just want to say one more thing.
Sure.
Tori, I've been sitting on the board for a while. You are the first student representative that has engaged with the board tonight. And I just want to say thank you so much for answering all of JD's questions.
Good for you.
I wanted to come.
You have done an awesome job. One thing that you said a while ago was they just click C whenever they take the test if they really don't care.
Yeah.
Like JD, it's been a long time since I've been in school. We didn't click C. We were told to fill in the bubble C. So that's still around. That amazes me.
Yeah.
Oh, I do have copies of that, Jeremy, if anybody else wants it. And I did talk to Calvin Callahan, our representative, to see if he would verify what Jeremy said, Representative Jeremy said. And he said, yes, what he has on this paper is absolutely true.
He's the chair of the assembly. He's a senator or assemblyman?
Assemblyman.
He's the chair of the education committee, so.
Yeah, he would know, yeah.
So Amy, on the one chart you had up there that showed the scores for White Lake, Elko, Rhinelander.
Yep.
It looked like White Lake wasn't that great, but I don't quite understand how they rate 65th in the state.
It was not very different than ours.
So just remember how much was the achievement score. So they could have scored higher on their growth score or their on track or target group score. I'm sorry, I'm not doing a good job of multitasking here to show. But just remembering the configuration of a score is the academic portion is not always a large portion of that sum score. So even though they might have scored not as well as us in that category, their growth score could have made up the difference if their students were achieving at higher rates than previous years.
It's still weird. So we have 22% proficient, and we're ranked at the very bottom. In White Lake, only 16% proficient, but they're at the very top. So that's a very weird. Yeah, it's like a.
Yeah, JD, I'm sorry for cutting you off while we.
No, that's what I was curious. That's why I wanted to bring this up after you pointed that out.
But what that score was that I gave to you is the overall, the total
Yeah.
score.
And this is only the reading score.
And that is broken down. What Amy did is drill down farther to a deeper level, deeper dive.
Do you have the math portion too? Or so essentially, is that ELA on top? Is this math including calculus? So they're a little better at math than us. But we, what is the bottom? No test. So they have a lot more no tests and a little better at math, 2%.
Could the testing only be done in person?
Yes, all of the tests have to be done in person.
That's when I think White Lake remote. Okay.
Are there any other, I'm sorry that I closed that, are there any other slides anyone wanted to reference?
Tell us something at the end to make us feel better.
Well, I think the questions that we're all talking about and asking, it's healthy to have a good discussion and ask questions of what's happening because it's clear that we all want to do better for our students. That includes all the people sitting here in this room, and I appreciate parents being here, our administrators being here, teachers tuning in at home, other families tuning in at home. I mean, we want to do better for our students, and that is our ultimate goal. So I think it's healthy for us to talk about this. These are complex things. It's not like we're just manufacturing one thing after another where we can just pump it out. All of our students are individuals, just like all of our teachers are individual learners, and we're all trying to work to our best ability. So I think it's healthy. I think we can talk about these things and ask some tough questions and hear each other out. So it is where we are, and it's not the news that we want to be reporting to you because there's a lot of hard work going into teaching all of our students each and every day, and it comes with its challenges, but it also comes with a lot of celebration. So I don't want us to lose sight of the good work that is happening, and our adults have been doing a lot of learning around identifying their standards and improving their assessments and talking about subject areas that they haven't been able to look at for several years, like in math. Like our elementary teachers haven't talked about math in a lot of years, and they're having that opportunity this year. So there is a lot to do. We recognize that, and we have to just take one step at a time with the goal of improving our student achievement. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any more from the board on school report card here? Then we're going to go on to item D, Esser 3 community presentation.
Well, Okay, so previously, Mary Kay had shared with you some resources, a short video of me explaining this PowerPoint, given you this PowerPoint, and then also a stakeholder feedback form. I'm not going to go through the presentation because you've had time to review it, but I do want to see if anyone has any questions, the next step is then for us to share this out with our community and family stakeholder group so we can engage them in some data, acknowledging the funding source, where we can use these funds, and ideas that they might have for supporting our students in school. So this has been shared with our staff as well, and we're engaging them in soliciting feedback for them too. So I'd be happy to attempt to answer any questions you might have or other ideas.
Can you remind me what Esser 3 is?
Okay, so in response to COVID-19, the federal government and then the state government has supplied us with several different funding sources throughout COVID response. So we have been granted government dollars to help defray the costs of some of the impacts of COVID-19, whether that's related to additional purchases of PPE, safety requirements, maybe updating some of our systems that we needed for air quality, all the way down to mitigating or addressing learning loss, mental health supports and services that we might need for our students because of school closure or so there's 5 categories that we can address and submit funds to. Esser 3 is the latest of those funding sources, and it's also the largest. It's over multiple years for us to spend down. So really the engagement piece is how would our community, how would you, how would our teachers like to see us use some of these dollars within the parameters of the federal grant, because they give us parameters that we have to spend within. So this little video and presentation just gives a brief explanation of some of that, what we have been spending the dollars on. A lot of it is additional staffing, some different people that we put in place, like long-term subs, some coaches, we bought some of our Chromebooks and internet Kajits so that students and families could have internet access, some of our learning management software and training, things to help so that we could help to mitigate any of the learning loss, as well as some of those PPE things and safety protocol that we needed to also put into place, especially last year. So, but we want to hear from you. So after tonight, we'll send this out to families and then the community as well, and then people can submit their feedback. There's a very short exit slip, which just kind of asks for any ideas that people would have for us to use the funds as we spend them down in the next few years.
Would we include broad categories of our spending in that survey?
So there is, if you reviewed the...
Yes, I did. So I'm just thinking, if I receive the survey, common questions are how is, in the community, how is our COVID funds being spent? Like, would that be included in the survey?
So like right here, these are the categories, if this is what you're meaning, that we used some of our ESSER 2 funds for, so like the preparedness and response, addressing long-term closure, and these are the categories and parameters that we have to spend within or tie the dollars to. Mental health services and supports. One of them is also after-school programming. So that is in there.
Yeah, okay. So, because I'm just thinking, before taking the survey, it'd be helpful if it was listed within the survey first, and then...
Oh, meaning adding, I would have to re-look. I made the survey a couple weeks ago, so re-look and see if I have it directly.
Because I'm just thinking it may deflect questions of, like, where has it been spent currently? Because then they would have that information and be able to, like, I don't know, make it... I don't know what I'm trying to say right now.
So I did indicate in the video and this presentation where we have spent some of the funds, so they would have an idea of what those categories kind of mean. So the goal is and there's attachments in here as well. You can read more on DPI. They're very comprehensive and lengthy, some of them, about ideas or approved or not approved items, but you can read and reference that as well.
Correct, yes. No, and I have. I'm just thinking, so if as a parent getting this survey, here's a brief overview of what the survey is going to be. Here's how our district has currently spent the funds. Here's the survey. Now when I see a question about preparedness and response, now I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Here's how here's what this means for our district. Yeah, I think we continue to spend it that way, as opposed to not having the background information right at the top of the survey as a parent. And then I'm thinking, like, I don't know. does this mean, or how would this impact our district? You know, maybe provide more well-informed responses from parents.
I'm trying
Or
to
those
click on my
maybe
link here to see, I can't exactly remember, but I can double check to make sure that there's a reference for that.
It was just a suggestion, and just sharing feedback, I guess.
Andy, can I waste 2 minutes in banning books?
Can I just finish this, JD,
Yes,
please?
after
Okay, is that okay if I just finish this and then I'll go sit down? Thanks. I do have some examples in here about what those things are that we have used. So you can see here, it's very short. So preparedness and response, staffing and PPE, addressing long-term closure, staffing, before after school programming, curricular updates, educational technology, devices, Kajits, mental health. So I did give some examples in there.
I apologize.
Nope, that's okay.
I did not realize that link was in by the QR code thingy, so I didn't click on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So we'll send this out after tonight. You can also complete it as well. And then we'll keep it open at least through December. We'll see what kind of response rate we get and if we need to do another push in the new year. And then the goal is to come back together, look at the feedback, come out with trends of maybe what we are doing, continue to do those things, but then also address any things that come up that maybe are not being addressed. So we want to hear from you. All right, thank you. Does anyone have anything else?
Good job, Amy.
Thank you. Okay, you want to go back?
Yeah,
One
just
quick
for
question.
comment. How do we, when I was in high school, when we were in biology, we had to take a parental consent form home for the day to talk about evolution. Do we still do that? Does anybody, Clint, do you know that?
I don't know the answer to that, JD.
No, we.
I've not heard of
Oh,
it.
Terry's over here.
I don't recall that.
You didn't get a form, or you guys didn't talk about evolution?
We did talk about evolution, but I don't remember getting a form. Typically, all you get in science is your lab forms that your parents have to sign.
Okay, but not whether you were going to learn about it and God's existence and things like that. It's interesting to be on the school board when there's this big national fight about critical race theory, and it reminds me of the evolution fights in what year was that Stokes monkey trial? Anybody know? When was that big fight?
20s, I think.
It's not that much fun, but interesting from a historical perspective. But that's why I thought I don't know. I don't know what the list of books looks like. I wonder, Dave, do you feel they need to be banned, or if a parent signed a consent? Or if a parent signed a
I
form?
already said what I thought.
Yeah,
It's my
yes.
feeling that if a parent wants to buy that book for their child, yes.
They could, but if you had a...
But if it's in our high school library for anyone to take without their parents knowing, I have a problem with that.
I see that.
That's the
So
problem.
if you had a restricted section, kid goes and tells their parents, just like Harry Potter, get a sign, you can take this book home. Would you be okay with that?
Sure.
I mean, that feels better to me than flat out banning books. That reminds me of...
I didn't say anything about banning.
I know, you said burning books.
No, and I said I wasn't for that also.
Okay. I'm just curious. I was just throwing that out there as a compromise before we have a big fight.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go on to item E, 2021-2022 Board Development Tool Survey Discussion. So we haven't done a board development survey, and we usually do one about this time of the year. And I don't think it's a big, we get this from WASB. I don't recall receiving anything. Usually they send something.
Yeah, a reminder, yeah.
And that's why it's on the agenda.
So I can forward it. I just want to know what kind of a timeline you'd like to follow. To make responses.
Yes, in the past, we have put a timeline on this so that we all do the survey within, I think we limited it to a month.
Yeah, I think so.
And so you have received it, we could do this, and what would be reasonable for people to have that done?
I can send it out tomorrow, December 1st, and have it due the 3rd when we come back after vacation.
Okay.
How long does it take?
It's the same one we did last year.
No,
Same one.
yeah, so you didn't do it last year, Jill. I'm thinking it takes
Less than an hour.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was assuming.
definitely less than an hour.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's even less than that.
Then we can all do it right before the deadline anyways.
I would propose a
Generally
deadline
what
before Christmas because
Because you won't get it
the
done during that
response
week?
rates are likely to be higher.
Yes, but why don't we go ahead and say done by January 3rd? And Mary Kay will send out a reminder maybe about, or maybe he'll just let us know at the next meeting how many people have completed it. Okay. And then we'll go on to board action items. And item A is consideration to approve support staff substitute wage increase.
I move the board approve the support staff substitute wage increase as presented.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? We went over this at the cow meeting. And we'll just go ahead with a roll call vote.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes?
Newfeld, Hyatt,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. Then to item B, consideration to approve auditor services for the fiscal year of 2021, 2023. Somebody like to make a motion?
I move the board accept the bid from Clifton Larson Allen LLP for auditor services as presented.
I'll second that.
Anybody got any questions or comments on this? We went over this also.
So it,
It's here.
It's on the table.
This is like you're challenging.
Take your pick.
okay. Is it not working?
Here, this is
I told you that I was going to do a little more analysis on the information provided. So as I talked last time about, it's called the single audit. It is anytime we receive federal dollars in excess of $750,000, we have a program audit. So during the period, it's likely that we're going to have for the next 3 years, 3 program audits. So it's really, that would add an additional $5,000 to the bid from Kerber Rose. And then we have included, they track our fixed assets, and that's an additional $900. So it's really a balance. This year, in January, you're gonna have an audit report from the auditor, which will be Clifton, Larson and Allen. It's not gonna be a clean audit. We've got some findings in it related to things that we've already discussed, primarily the adjustments with OPEB, and we talked a little bit about, we had a payroll payable with an HRA account, and it'll be in a management letter to the board, and you'll receive that. I would think that I should, we've just struggled with them. But the auditors are incredibly knowledgeable. And I could go with a different firm, but I strongly believe that they will provide the most thorough audit, which from your perspective is what I think is what we should do. We are still working on the audit. They've drug it out that we are working on it this week yet. So we've been in and out of audit questions since July. And that's taking up way too much time in our office. I will make that contingent that if they don't figure out how to speed it up, and part of it is COVID with them too, where they have staff in and out with their COVID protocols. But for our team to be getting drugged back into last year on details, is just something that we can't tolerate because it just takes too much time up on their part and our part. But I am recommending that we go with them because of the thoroughness at which they do their work.
Okay. Anybody got a comment on that? And we have a motion and a second, and we can go ahead with the roll call.
Maddox Nelson?
Yes.
Neufeld?
Yes.
Hyatt?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Bartle?
Yes.
Gagnon?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes. And we'll go on to item C, consideration to approve equipment modifications at the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center.
I move the board approve the bid for equipment modifications for the Clara R. McKenna Aquatic Center as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, so on the attachment, you'll see the three bids. The company that we're recommending is Badger Swim Pools, and we are recommending that we accept both the contract amount and the alternative for the glass media. The other two bids, Newman Pools, did include everything in the spec, but I think they were just uninterested in doing the job due to workload based on talking to them prior to their number being submitted. Caracal Aquatic, they chose to provide an alternative way that did not meet our spec, so we're not interested in going with them. I do feel that Newman Pools is, or Badger Swim Pools is a good value and includes everything required, so. The motion that I would ask is that you approve to award the bid to Badger Pools in an amount not to exceed $244,322. And that would allow us to go with glass media alternate. We
Jake,
do what? Yeah.
What is that?
It's, so the whole project is the filter system at the Aquatic Center. So
Yeah.
There's the current system we have is sand, and this new media is glass, and I don't know everything that I want to about it yet. When they presented it as an alternative, we didn't have it in the original spec, so I want to do a little bit more research into it before I for sure go with it, but I'd like the approval to go with it if we see that as a value at that point.
I think it's better.
They do, that's their recommendation, and as you can see, all three companies did provide that as an alternative, so that is kind of a new trend going through the industry, so I think we'll probably go with it, but like I said, I just haven't had time to review it with our engineer that designed the project spec, and talk it over with the Aquatic Center board as well, so.
I feel like they should change the name. It just sounds weird to say you're gonna put something glass in the swimming pool.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So that motion includes the cost not to exceed $244,322. $322. That's what the motion now says?
Yes. And Mary, you made that motion? Is that right?
I did not have that amount provided.
It wasn't
when
in there,
she did that.
Do you want me to?
Reword your motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my fault, so I apologize for that.
I move the board accept the bid from Badger Swim Pools Incorporated not to exceed $244,322.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? And then we'll go ahead with the roll call.
Neufeld?
Yes.
Hyatt?
Yes.
Schrader?
Yes.
Bartle?
Yes.
Gagnon?
Yes.
Maddox Nelson?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes. And we'll go ahead with item D, consideration to approve overnight travel.
I move the board approve the following overnight travel: high school gymnastics to Rice Lake on January 21, 22, 2022, and Ashland on February 11-12-2022. The German Club trip to Chicago on December 20 and 21, 2021. Antigo FFA trip to Stevens Point for Wisconsin FFA halftime conference. Leadership conference on January 14-15, 2022. And the Antigo wrestling team overnight trip to UW Oshkosh for the 2-day wrestling tournament on December 29, 30, 2021.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then we'll go on to item E, report of district new hires.
Move the board approve the following new hires. Christine Drager, middle school lunch assistant, and Heather Hall, middle school special education instructional assistant.
Second.
Any questions or comments on these? And we'll do a roll call vote.
Hire,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Gagnon,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Newfeld,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes. We'll go on to item F, report of donations.
I move the board accept the following donations. $228.28 from the Rotary Club of Antigo for Environmental Education Center at Neboken. $800 from Deborah Harris, instrumental donation to the AMS band program. $892 from the Community Health Foundation for Antigo Athletics impact testing. $1,669.44 from Community Health Foundation for AHS health education classes. $1,500 from Walmart Community Grants Team for Fill a Backpack, Fill a Need, for a total of $5,089.72. Rotary Club of Antigo also built and donated benches and picnic tables to EECA on total value $3,180 between monetary and materials.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'd just like to say thank you to all those who donated. It's very generous of our community. Anything else? Anybody else would like to add? And then,
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then we will go on to confirm the next meeting. And the normal next meeting would be December 28th. That's over Christmas break. And I'm just going to suggest that we just have one meeting in December, and we, instead of having a COW meeting on the 14th, that we would have a regular board meeting.
Andy?
Andy, I do have a number of crisis plan related things, as every December I do, for the safety grant approvals and things of that nature, that I was going to present that COW. If you'd like, I can just share that stuff with you, next week as normal, or, the week of the normal COW meeting. But then I'd be looking for approval at the regular Board of Education meeting at the end of December.
Or if we consolidate into one meeting, you could
Yeah, I'll
ask
still
for
present
approval.
on it, but I'll
Mhm.
provide the information. Because, it's the whole crisis plan, so it's something you'd want to
Right.
probably review before that night.
Is it a lot different than the other years?
No,
But you can send us the plan
Yeah.
before that night.
correct. I'll send it to you either probably next week.
Okay.
So,
And so then we'd be able to approve it on the 14th
Mhm.
without a problem for you.
30th, 28th, what did you say?
No, I'm saying that I would suggest that we only have one meeting next month, and it'd be December 14th.
Do you want to?
correct. I just want to be clear that I'm going to be asking for approval at that. And typically, we bring it to Cal for you to review.
Yep.
And then approval at the monthly meeting. So I just want to be clear that I would need approval at that.
Yes, I understand that, and I also understand that you're going to send it to us with plenty of time for us to review it. And I was hoping to do this by consensus.
Okay.
Is there a consensus to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And with that, we can adjourn. We can have a motion to adjourn, I should say.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.